Hello, respected viewers. It's George from Ireland here. So, I'm here to treat you to a video about Trump and hubris. So, viewers of my channel will be very cognizant of my utter abomination of Donald J. Trump. So, high office often leads to hubris, and hubris is an aggressive arrogance, to really simplify, but I'm going to expound on it at great length. And it can be viewed as an acquired personality disorder. There was an article in Brain magazine about 10 years ago about this one, by Professor Jonathan Davidson and Dr. David Owen. So Dr. Owen, is a British politician. He's still alive. He's 81. I went to talk by him once. Delightful chap. And I remember in the 1980s, some teenage girls I knew at the time used to fancy him. The sort of middle-aged man that a teenage girl might have the hots for. Anyway, he's a medical man, Dr. Owen. That's why he's Dr. Owen. And was foreign secretary in the Labour government, helped set up the Social Democratic Party, blah blah blah. Perhaps the best prime minister the United Kingdom never had a broad appeal. Seemed like the most clubbable sort of Labour MP, or indeed the most unthreatening kind of conservative. And there's another article about it in Psychiatrist magazine in 2011. So, just as a general reader, I read a bit about hubris syndrome, and I'm not a physician at all. I can't diagnose anyone. Like anyone with half a brain, I can recognize a few symptoms, and sometimes I might get things wrong. I can tell when someone's paranoid. I mean, I can't tell they're clinically paranoid, but in the colloquial sense, or if somebody is, let's say, elated, or what would it be, depressed. I can't say whether they're clinically depressed or not, but they're things that really any remotely intelligent person can recognize. And the things that people who are not doctors like me, well, I couldn't recognize, or I'd misdiagnose, and even doctors get it wrong sometimes. So these are just observations. I'm not claiming to have any medical knowledge. Anyway, so they often say how power goes to somebody's head, and this is part of the Trump psychodrama. There's been a lot of psychobabble spouted about Trump, so here's some more. Prepare for a very generous dollop of it. Yeah, in the book Rhetoric by Aristotle, he's talked about a hubris as this compulsion to demonstrate superiority. Now, it masks an inner doubt, because why is the person impelled to constantly reaffirm their mastery over others? They really want to prove they have dominion over others, I suppose, because there's this inner sense of worthlessness that is dragging them down. It masks that inner doubt. So Trump is someone who's always trying to reinforce his own paramountcy, and harping on about it incessantly, wanting to belittle others. It's actually proof positive of weakness, not strength, to be behaving like that, constantly throwing his weight around, and composing hymns of praise to himself. Well, they're quite cacophonous, not euphonious, the things he's singing. And hubris, well, hubristai in Greek is insults. That's what it means. So it's being vain in a way that's about being offensive to other people as much as possible. If you watch Coriolanus, it'll ring true how leadership can go wrong, how it can really exacerbate the worst traits in a person. There's an element of megalomania there, the craziness of greatness. Now, I know that megalomania and hubris can be occupational hazards for a leader, someone who starts out normal. I don't mean that as a sort of a value judgment, but ordinary, somewhat gifted, but psychologically not unusual, can end up like this way. And if someone has any tendencies in that direction, they just get pushed further in that direction towards hubris and megalomania. Now, it can be worsened by surrounding themselves with smooth talking flatterers, as some of them have tended to do. Like you see this in Thatcher, for example, or there are numerous more examples in history. And I'm not trying to say that one is like the other. If I take someone who's politically fairly middle of the road, not totalitarian anyway, and liken the person to an ogre of a tyrant like Papadoc Duvalier, And Jean-Claude Duvalier, well, certainly had his cult of personality, or Stalin, or Pol Pot, or Mao, or Ceausescu, or Mussolini, to some extent Franco, or Salazar, or the historical examples like Nero or Caligula, and on and on. You know, we could be here all night, so I'm not going to not to draw too many historical parallels. And all these parallels are imperfect. No two figures are identical, of course. Anyway, so there's the aggressive arrogance that is hubris. It reminds me of that saying amongst conservative whips in the UK that no prime minister leaves Downing Street entirely sane. They always go a bit mad in the job. Even like John Major, quite an unimpressive, drab figure. Well, I shan't give you my benefit of my thoughts about him and his hypocrisy on proroguing Parliament. But anyway, quite average, quite middle of the road. The common man, that was supposed to be part of his appeal. But he was afflicted a bit by paranoia, was a bit too touchy towards the end about the press, that it got to him. It really affected him the caning he was getting in the media. But if you can't stand the heat, all right. So I remember it's like Enoch Poll said, you know, a politician complaining about the press is like a sailor complaining about the sea. Well, you're obviously in the wrong line of work if you can't take it, because you live by this, but you die by this. You need it. So you've got to take the rough with the smooth. Anyway, there's a certain intoxication of power, lead to craving it, to wanting it more and more, and to never letting go of it. So probably not good for you. So some people are addicted to the limelight, as Trump certainly is. So Trump has always been a media hoe. He's a loafer, but despite his lassitude, he is a tireless self-publicist. Another fascinating thing to note about him is how he cheats, like at golf, kicking the ball and so on. Napoleon used to cheat at cards quite a lot. So he's not a competitive golfer. Nobody thinks he's a fantastic golfer. Even he doesn't claim to be good at golf. But I suppose he just can't take losing. He can't play fair. It can't be just a game, which is fun, and the outcome doesn't particularly matter. You know, I'm really third rate at sports. Now, I can play and lose every single time and still enjoy it. Yeah, I prefer to win, but I long ago accepted that I'm no good. So I'm not going to cheat in these games. So it suggests some immaturity to think that winning dishonestly is any kind of achievement that would impress anyone, or even that would impress himself, as though he's dexterous enough to be able to cheat without anybody noticing. But is there any causal link between this conduct and holding office? Not the cheating in golf, he's been doing that for years apparently, but his big-headedness and so on. And I suppose it is as part of his cognitive decline. Maybe we're seeing his real personality coming out, and he's less and less able to contain himself. But the whole milieu in which a president serves is likely to enhance these tendencies. Especially if such a mighty country. If you're like president of like Monaco or something, well, sorry, Monaco, stupid example. They don't have a president of San Marino, probably not, because you don't get the idea we're the mightiest. But America's superlative in so many ways, good and bad, that it's likely to really affect somebody. Yeah, so some people are very susceptible to the temptations of office, like these baubles and this glitter, and that certainly appeals to Trump. It really is something that delights him to see parades and to see his name in lights and so on. So military parades, that does it for him. The ceremonial, being lauded as though the splendor of the people would be reflected to them through him, as though he's a mirror that is to bounce off. But for him, no, it's all about him, all about absorbing it. It reminds me of Lord Acton's well-worn dictum that power tends to corrupt and absolute power tends to corrupt absolutely. Notice he said tends to, and that's a vital word. Do you think Trump's patriotism is just narcissism? Largely, yes, because I mean he doesn't give a damn about America. If you really cared about people, you would say pay your taxes to the country, or pay your people decently. Do something for ordinary people. He's got $10 billion, we told. Now, so far as I know, he's not given a dime to charity. What has he done for his people? What has he sacrificed? He got out of the military. He skived that by claiming to have these bone spurs. They're still there, if he had them, because they're there for life. Didn't show up in any medical report. And loads of things. Some sort of loyalty to the country, not being an agent for Putin. So no, I don't think he gives a damn. He's only ever cared about numero uno. But he can easily wrap himself in the flag because there are enough dimwits who'll fall for that, think that hugging the flag is patriotism rather than actually serving the public. He certainly doesn't value freedom of expression or the right to a fair trial or things like that, which are supposedly the American values. Anyway, so you see in these in hubris like an indifference to truth amongst the hubristic, and particularly amongst Trump, or just a denial of the plain truth. He suffers from this total lack of humility, and the thing about acknowledging truth is it requires someone to accept that so many things are beyond human agency to control, right? Like, did it rain today? Well, that's a fact that either rained or it didn't. In fact, it didn't here. But we couldn't control whether it rained. And someone like Trump wouldn't like to accept that. Say, well, I can make it rain, or like things like saying that it didn't rain during his inauguration. Something that flagrantly untrue when it was being filmed, it was being shown live on television, that millions of people saw that, and it most blatantly was raining. He felt compelled to lie about something that obvious, just absolutely barefaced lies about something so basic. And really that set the tone for it. And having his press spokesman, Sean Spicer, lie his arse off about the attendance numbers when anyone could see that, no matter how absolutely incontrovertible the proof, he will lie. He will say that up is down. He will say that dead is alive. He will say that black is white. He will say that yes is no. Because Trump is someone who's fixated with reputation and numbers. I know he'll make up numbers all the time, and he'll say, yeah, it's 58%, no, it's 63%, no, it's 99%, and some people say it's 105%. You hear him do this, changing the number all the time, upwards, if that's looking better for him for the number to be going up. So just no concern about accuracy at all. Even the lies don't have to be accurate lies. If you see them like a consistent lie, well, I'll just change the number as though numbers can be imagined and that's remotely convincing. How on earth does anyone think he has any credibility? And some people trust this man. And he's also obsessed with retribution. Only when he vows revenge is he a man of his word. On the other hand, he's somehow managed to forgive people who've not been apologetic. I don't think there's exactly magnanimity on his case, but kiss and make up with the likes of Ted Cruz and Mitt Romney, who once castigated him. But obviously these men have got no moral backbone. So he I suppose perceives people as instruments to be picked up, used, and cast aside. A bit like Bojo claiming there was no press at the hospital. Well, exactly. I mean, what a ludicrous and blindingly obvious lie that was by Boris Johnson when you're live on television. I mean, come on. So I think Bojo is that bad, but Bojo's got at least some intelligence. But yeah, it was an outright lie on behalf of Boris Johnson. So potency is a heady substance, and how you can see how it can affect people. One of the troubles with Trump, one of the problems with him is he's got no sense of humor or irony. He doesn't really tell a joke. He will make a particularly vile insult. He will always be punching down, particularly towards women. So he lacks any decency. For example, some of his staff insulting John McCain as he was dying, and Trump not sacking the person. When a female journalist asks him a worthwhile question, he'll say that she's suffering from PMT, like did that to Megyn Kelly, despite the fact that she worked for his more or less house channel, Fox News. And so he's got no detachment from situations. You need to put aside all feeling and just approach this in a rational manner. No, he can't do that. So he's not tethered to reality as one would hope. I told you about some of the absolutely obvious lies that he's told, and people just seem to forgive this mendacity. Well, the Trump cult does. And what else? So he's slipped his moorings in terms of veracity. And that's worrying because he could lie to other people. That's one thing. That's bad. Everybody lies, myself included. But if you lie to yourself, that's a bit more perturbing. Because can he distinguish between fact and fantasy? I don't think that he can, actually. And then it can keep changing. So he suffers from overweening pride. Pride comes before a fall, as the Greeks said. he's so snarling and insolent towards those who thwart him, those who have the temerity to point out the plain truth to him. So he treats reasonable questions as impudence when they come from journalists. You know, like even George Stephanopoulos, like, you're a little wise guy. Okay, well, he is a wise guy in the literal sense, but come on, you say you'd love to release your tax returns, release them. Must be something embarrassing in there. Of course, Trump is stumped. He's got no answer. It's completely logical what Stephanopoulos is saying. So a bit like, are you going to speak to Robert Mueller? I would love to, but then he never did. Well, don't love to, do it. So who just doesn't stick to the things he says he's going to do, and he's obviously a complete coward, just ducking the question, avoiding doing the right thing. And I suppose he's got a certain low cunning. He's learnt that he can just get away with these things, acting in the most completely unethical manner. And so long as you pretend to care about certain issues the Republican Party cares about, like abortion, they will forgive you well nigh all, despite his total impenitence, and despite obviously constantly reoffending. Anyway, he's lost his marbles. You see some footage from us, let's say 30 years ago, and he's tranquil, he seems reasonable, he's fairly articulate, he's in control of himself. I suppose that's an act. He's almost likable, and that's long since gone. He's lost any self-discipline. So this aberrant behaviour, partly just age, I suppose partly just the office, this feeling he should be able to do anything he wants, gets away with anything he wants, and presumably being egged on by the people who surround him. So magical thinking, well, if I want it to be true, then it will be true. You know, that the economy is not going to go into recession, despite all the indicators to the opposite. That climate change is not happening. That, like coal is not polluting, stuff like that. So he's got disdain for expert opinion that he does not like. Now, remember, that's the best known Latin tag, quem deum pedere vult prium dementat. Well, he's gone mad a long time ago. Was he born mentally ill? Possibly. Mentally ill is maybe too strong a word. Personality disorder. But an inability to tell apart what is veracious and what is bogus. Well, that is that madness? I suppose it is. Because, as I say, lying to other people is different. I know the truth. I'm going to say something false to you, and there's a reasonable chance you'll believe it. I'm not saying something obviously true, untrue, or that you know to be untrue, because it'll avoid me getting into trouble or somehow advantage me. That would be a rational lie, but he doesn't do it on that basis. Anyway, David E. Cooper, one of the people who wrote about this, it's about excessive self-belief, and it really is the self part of this is crucial. The scariest thing that's popular is boosted by foolishness, and many naive Americans find it entertaining. Well, as I said, he's a media hoe, and he has name recognition on his side, The Apprentice. Well, I think it was Michael Bloomberg said, because the thing is, this is not a reality TV show, this is reality. And it's ironic he was on a reality TV show as Trump has long since parted company with reality. Adam Clark, if that's just a facade to make him more electable, I don't know. I'm pulling at straws here. What's a facade exactly? Sorry. Does he believe the things he's saying? I think sometimes he does, actually. Sometimes it strikes me that he doesn't. He gives the tail, the blinking, the looking away, refusing to make eye contact. Not sure about the nervous behaviour, the self-comforting, the rubbing his nose immediately like that, or touching the mouth, almost as though to clean away the lie. These are some of the blatant signs of the person knowing that he or she has said something deceitful. So he is fork-tongued, definitely. But he appeals to certain people because he speaks in sentences of a single clause. His language is very simple because he is a simpleton. Trump's stupidity could be a facade. No, I don't think so. He's so ashamed of his school transcript he won't release it. People say he never reads anything. He has a very narrow vocabulary. What else? He's an ignoramus. He, said Nambia rather than Namibia. There's not isolated examples. What is the sum total of his knowledge about Islam? And he said there are mostly bad people, there are some good people, they've got mosques are beautiful, and that's about it. So he knew like 4 things about Islam. I can't think Has he ever revealed himself to know nothing? He'll often say, yeah, not a lot of people know, and then something really obvious, that Lincoln was a Republican. Well, loads of people, I think most American school children would know that Abraham Lincoln was a Republican, and there'll be many more examples of that. Or saying that in the Republic of Ireland we want to build a wall. Nobody talked about building a wall. You just made that up. Anyway, so split thinking, things are either good or evil. What were the University of Pennsylvania admission team doing when they accepted him? Thinking about donations, I would guess. Now, okay, in fairness, I don't actually know that his father donated any money, but come on, especially in those days in the 60s, if your old man measured up financially, that was going to help. Yeah, Greenland, another thing. Like, apropos of nothing, saying we're going to purchase Greenland. Whoever said that Greenland was on the market? When is the last time one country has sold sovereign territory to another? I can't think. Not least, sold. I mean, Alaska, 1867. And rather than dealing with real problems like lack of affordable healthcare. So, as Manichaean, you're either good or evil for him is, are you useful to me or are you an obstacle to me? It's not about actual morality. And there's this sort of double thing that he paid Stormy Daniels and he didn't pay Stormy Daniels. And he knew about the payment, he didn't know about the payment, and he reimbursed Michael Cohen, and he didn't reimburse Michael Cohen, and the two can be true at the same time. Anyway, so it's the big lie theory. He will obviously tell the most outrageous whoppers of lies, because most people just wouldn't think someone would tell such a huge lie. Everybody tells trifling lies, but most people don't tell gigantic lies, and they can't quite conceive that he would do this. Like to say that, loss is profit. He's lost billions and billions of dollars, but claims to be an excellent businessman. Or that Trump University has absolutely no connection with Donald Trump, despite him being in the promotional videos. That truth is a lie, that fake news, when it's actually some of the most respected and honest news channels in the world, like CNN or MSNBC, that's fake news. A man who's told something like 12,000 lies on the record since entering office. So yeah, he surrounded himself with people who will just sing his praises, reinforce his delusions, tell him what he wants to hear. A small loan of $1 million. Yeah, in the 60s, $1 million was a small loan. Trump is very intelligent. Well, what do you mean by intelligent then? Yeah, he's a self-made man. He inherited $400 million in the early 70s. Anyway, so these people massage his ego, I think, constantly. So the thing about democracy was very difficult for someone like Donald Trump is it trammels power. They're restrained, and leaders have to vacillate. Sometimes it's a good thing to consider options. What's the difference between Trump supporters and Brexiteers? Well, lots. Obviously, Trump is an individual, and he's the president. Brexiteers are those who voted for the United Kingdom to leave the European Union. Now, you could be left, right, or centre and voted for Brexit. There are even some SNP supporters who voted for Brexit, and that's that. And you can have any view on the environment or on taxation or on, goodness knows, education and vote for Brexit. Whereas Trump obviously had a platform, a series of policies. There are people who usually voted Republican. Some hadn't voted at all. A few who voted for Democrat the previous time. No way, a narcissistic politician, I'd never. Trump made Trump Foundation is what's by Trump. I don't quite understand the question. Yes, he did set up the Trump Foundation. That's one of the few true statements he's made. Some Brexiteers are nasty racists. Well, probably a few are, but come on, prove to me how many. But even if they are absolutely foul racists and dead wrong in that issue, that doesn't mean that Brexit is wrong in itself. That's this that logical fallacy is guilt by association. Okay. Let me see. If Hitler said 2 and 2 was 4, would he be wrong? Just because an evil person believes something does not in itself make it wrong. Anyway, so we have to meditate and pause in a democratic system, and there are limits on what a leader can do. There are processes to go through. It takes time. Have to weigh up the pros and the cons. Ideally, that means that no mistake can be too big. It can't be utterly cataclysmic, because we can make it slow down. We can limit what he does, make him stop and think about it. That's what checks and balances are. He can't go too far, and decisions could be reversed. That's why he has faces election every 4 years, 2-term limit, things like that. the separation of powers into three branches of government. So the trouble with democracy there is it's slow, it's sometimes indecisive, we sometimes do things by half measures. Brexiteers are many ideologies, racist, ordinary people with no prejudices. Thank you for that, Robert. So anyway, liberty requires hypervigilance against the power hungry, and Trump is obviously someone who would like to amass more power for himself. That's why he has such fellow feeling for tyrants around the world. Those who have no restraint on what they do at all can be president for life. So people like him would like to usurp liberty in a time of crisis to engineer that sense of crisis in order to provide an excuse for a grab on power, to suspend civil liberties and so on. So there's more of a medical side to this. Does Trump have more power in the US than Bojo has in the UK? Well, yes, because Trump is head of command of the armed forces and so on. So many different people believe in Brexit, not necessarily racist, what I meant. So that's probably worth another video, the presidential and prime ministerial systems compared. Anyway, the frontostriatal and limbic striatal dopaminergic pathways in the brain regulate both rigidity and impulsivity. And oddly, they can go together. As in someone like Trump is very flighty, doing this and that. And I feel like this, and I'm angry, and I'm going to react and not stop and think about it. But at the same time, might be very rigid on certain issues, like that Trump is the greatest. Nothing could dissuade him. Could Brexit turn out to be a huge mistake? Well, just possibly. I ask myself, am I on the wrong side? Every branch of the US government has been compromised at this point, polluted by special interests and deep state actors. Well, I'm not so sure about the deep state, this conspiracy they're going on. I mean, that's the thing about Trump. Just what a liar he is, what a bigot he is. Like, you know, he appointed Mueller, who is a Republican, and saying he's unfair to me. Loads of Republicans have found against him, and he says it's still like a conspiracy against him. Brexit could unite Ireland. Yeah, there's a slim chance of that. Could have happened anyway. Anyway, especially no deal. That would make it a bit more likely, which is why I would have voted for this deal that Theresa May brought back almost a year ago. So recklessness, just Trump just dashing in without thinking. His extraordinary lassitude is contrasting with his somehow, well, manic phase of bursting with energy and just shooting his mouth off. He's seldom exultant, Trump, even after his inauguration. Yeah, upbeat, but not overjoyed. My romantic vision is a united Ireland as part of United British Isles. You don't hate the USA, correct? No, I don't hate the USA. I'd like to visit it again. I've been a few times, and there are marvelous things about it, and there are delightful people about it. I don't dislike any country. It'd be a negative emotion. That'd be unfair. I'm certainly not anti-American. There are aspects of American life there that I dislike, or let's say there's certain groups of people, as in by attitude, there I dislike. I find very little to like in the Republican Party. But let's come on to what the DSM has to say about this. That's the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of these various disorders. DSM-4. So there's antisocial personality disorder, histrionic personality disorder, and narcissistic personality disorder. Now, Trump has elements of all three, but particularly the last one, the narcissistic one, which overlaps with what's informally called hubris syndrome. And they have probably the same as hubris syndrome, narcissistic personality disorder, because there are many components in common, and there are many signs that he's hubristic. Yes, the press is the fourth estate. Not bitter has replaced the British Empire. USA was right in the American Revolution to do a video on that revolution. Yeah, I might do one on the American Revolution actually, and something that Trump totally wouldn't understand. That, you know, he wants to keep these people in Guantanamo Bay forever. What about the right to a fair trial? Limitations on arbitrary power. What is the United States for, if not for guaranteeing people a fair trial? You know. Anyway, sorry, where were we? Press is a revolving door for the Democrats. Was America right to defy George III? Ooh, that's a good question. I'm certainly minded to say no. Obviously, there were some bad things that George III was doing. To say it was intolerable was a bit much, especially as people being held in slavery there. And actually, ironically, white Americans were the most privileged people in the American empire, and the taxes are very low. And the Boston Tea Party was against reducing tax, not raising it. The smugglers didn't like it. George III was mad. He was mentally ill, yes. Trump is an imperfect person, but he happens to be our president. I measure him by his policies, and the impact of his policies, not by his personality or lack thereof. Well, sometimes it's lack of policy. Okay, well, I mean, I've gone out my way to be fair to him, say that the economy grew quite well, but you know he's doing harm with his trade war against China, and you know, damaging the environment by saying people can pollute more and locking up all these children at the border and loads of these things, and just not sorting out the situation in Syria, Iraq, or Afghanistan. He could fight or he could get out, but he does neither. Worst of both worlds. Anyway, so the thing about president, directly elected president, is it's always going to be a personality contest rather than really about policies. But the press is meant to be confrontation with the president. Well, yeah, I mean they should ask him the tough and embarrassing questions. They shouldn't be overly skeptical. The UDK declined the 19th century. USA replaced the British Empire as a power before World War One. Economically, yes, a president's personality is important because they should be a role model for the whole population. Exactly, commander-in-chief of the armed forces, and children look up to them. They set the tone, and we want to be able to trust this person to be cool under fire, to make the right decision in a tough situation. So there are ample signs that Trump is hubristic, and I'm afraid you're going to have to breach Godwin's law quite extensively. So I'll show you some of the criteria that he satisfies to show that he's hubristic. So he has a tendency to perceive the entire world as a forum for his own aggrandizement. All the world's a stage. So he's a glory boy. The president is meant to be confrontational with the press. Well, he can be rude to them, I suppose, and be a little bit skeptical. But he has to accept that the press are right to ask him embarrassing questions. Was the Irish famine a major factor in Irish independence? Well, not really. It didn't help, I suppose, but obviously it was quite some time before. I mean, almost 80 years before. Do a famine on home rule, on the famine to home rule bills. I might do sometime. So Trump is not about expediency, like, well, what's the wisest course here? Not about problem solving. He's not in politics for the right reasons. He's in it for, as to say, you know, bigging up his name, not to serve the public. You know, I see injustice, I want to change that or something, or I see valuable institutions that need to be safeguarded. So he's judging actions mainly by how they make him appear and not what they do. Most leaders do have hubristic syndrome. Trump's on another level. Yeah, I would say there's a tendency there in most people. You have to have a bit of arrogance, or you're just not going to be able to succeed. But yeah, he is off the chart. So he's preoccupied with his image, with his reputation. Do they have the right? They are owned by media groups, not the people. Well, yeah, you could have a publicly owned one. If the British managed famine better, no independence, I read in the history website, just want to hear your thoughts. Well, if there'd been no famine at all, then yeah, the Republican movement would have been as strong. Anyway, so he's messianic, the chosen one, looking to the heavens. He said that. Blasphemy. Why on earth is he not being denounced from the pulpit by Christian ministers of all denominations? They're absolutely craven towards him. So he speaks in extravagant praise for tyrants, gushing about them, and then is absolutely scathing and foully insulting about the leaders of America's allies, about the free world. Anyway, so also self-laudation, really over the top in that. Hi, watching your classes, your English sounds posh. Thank you, Claudio. So he considers himself and the nation to be inseparable. The state is all about his persona. Like Louis the 16th said, no, Louis the 14th said, l'état, c'est moi. The misters are all in his pocket, indeed. So very often talking in the third person. Now, there's a lot of I, me, my from him, but often Donald J. Trump. Do we think he's mad, ill, or working with the Russians? I would say all three. So Joe Biden would make a good president. Well, he'd definitely make a far better one than Trump, but there are problems with him, as he's slightly losing the plot too. Referring to himself as Donald J. Trump, putting his name Trump on all his buildings, Trump steaks, Trump wine, Trump everything. You don't think there's something deeply troubling about that? Nigel Farage, con man. Well, I don't agree. I do have quite a lot of time for Farage, but I've been worried by some of his anti-Romanian rhetoric. Sorry, ministers in pocket. Right. So Trump has got this unwarranted trust in his own decision making, this belief that he's always got it right. But like Mussolini said, I can smell the right decision. So if he poo-poos unwelcome advice or bad news, the right-wing evangelicals are as corrupt as Trump. Oh yeah, I mean, he is really the antithesis of them, what they're supposed to be about clean living, clean language, honesty, hard work, probity. Trump is not it all personality. I don't understand that. So Trump wants to shoot the messenger. Anyone who tells him anything he doesn't like to hear, he's irate. Know-it-all Trump, you're right. So he's so wrathful when he gets information that doesn't suit his agenda. When a rational person, an objective person, would be mature enough to accept, okay, that's bad news, I'm going to have to think again. Might have to change my plan. My policy might not be workable. So his weakness is want to believability, believing something because he wants to believe it. There's an element of wishful thinking in most people, but with Trump it would just be mindless optimism that the trade war is going to work, that Mexico is going to pay for the wall, that the global warming is not happening, that the economy is going great guns, things like that, that guns don't cause gun deaths. Bad spelling prediction on the phone, I get you. So he seems to believe that he's got these almost preternatural powers to get things right, that he can succeed without making an effort. This undue self-confidence is, well, beyond what one would expect in an exhibitionist and an extrovert. Yeah, sycophants everywhere. You're right, Peter Clark. So Trump was never going to be a panacea. He's just a brief reprieve from the time the Dems will usher in the next time they hold power. The hell they'll usher in, well, I don't think they'll usher in hell. Yet he came to the table with North Korea, yeah, and he achieved zilch, and they're still building up their nuclear weapons. So he gave them a massive propaganda boost. And can you imagine if Obama had done that? He would have been absolutely whipped by the Fox News channel. Do you suffer from text phone prediction sometimes? Yes, I do. It's annoying. So there's a sense that he cannot be scrutinized or gainsaid, and lesser mortals have no right to pass judgment on him. Courts and legislatures don't either. What is a sycophant? I think it means sycophant, as in someone who's sucking up to others, who's an ass kisser. So Trump appears to believe that only the almighty or posterity can judge him. The Dems will absolutely usher in hell next time they hold power. Well, I don't think so. Vincere automore. So conquer what? Self-death. Anyway, so he's got this unwavering belief that posterity will help him. I live in London, by the way. I'm answering questions on the screen. And indeed, the sort of the court of posterity would adulate him. So what else about Trump? It's a bit like Castro said, history shall absolve me. Is there an Olympics for lying, ignorance and stupidity and corruption? Trump would win the gold every time. Good point. They've been radicalized by the same media, LM is saying. It makes me call to mind what Hitler said at the end of his trial for the Beerholt Putsch. So 1924, at that trial, he said, the public prosecutor can pronounce me guilty 1,000 times, but the goddess who presides over the eternal court of history shall, with a smile, tear in pieces the judgment of this court. Anyway, so Trump's got this notion that he's been selected for some august destiny, as though things are written in the stars, preordained. So it's common amongst these hubristic personalities. Lügenpresse, or the lying press. Trump was at Sinn Féin fundraiser in 1994 in New York shaking Jerry Adams' hand. Yeah, and do you think Trump actually knows who Adams is, knows the first thing about Ireland? He would have sort of joined the Orange Order if he thought it would advance his cause. So Trump doesn't believe or disbelieve in anything apart from himself. Many have that notion. So a belief in portents, this superstition you see in Trump, Hitler begins Mein Kampf by writing, "Today it seems to me providential that Braunau am Inn should have been chosen for my birthplace, for this little town lies in the border between the two German states," as though the divine or whatever mysterious force had picked that place for a purpose, because it showed that this was his life's mission, that it wasn't just accident of birth, it's not random. Do you think Trump is generally religious? No, not remotely. He's nominally a Christian. He didn't even pretend to be religious till 2015. He was never known to go near a church but for weddings and funerals, and knows nothing about the Bible. He says, no one knows the Bible better than me. On what basis does he say that? What evidence is there that he knows about it? He doesn't read anything. Have you ever lost a political debate? Well, yeah, I suppose so, because I've been in lots of debates, and the majority haven't sometimes voted for me. Even if I'm right, doesn't prove that they wouldn't necessarily vote for me. Even as a better orator, I wouldn't necessarily vote for me. I might, supposing I was a superb orator, but I had to, propose a real impossible motion to get through. Let's say that people should not be allowed to drink milk. Well, you're not really going to get people to vote for that. And sometimes I've been the worst. Sometimes the other side's been just better debating. He's got German Catholic roots. I don't know if they're Catholic or Protestant, actually. And I know he's half Scots, yes, and he likes North Britain. Anyway, so Trump has got no grip on reality, like I was saying. And he's becoming ever more detached from ordinary people who are unbiased advisors, only listening to ones he likes. Is Hitler his guide? It worked. He casts his mum's Bible around a recent TV program. Why does Trump have such an inferiority complex about Obama? I suppose because Obama is so manifestly superior, more intelligent, more polite, more comfortable in his own skin, a higher achiever. Look at the dreadful situation the United States was in when Obama took over. It's difficult to remember that the world was on the brink of absolute financial meltdown, and it got better by any metric under Obama. Crime down, illegal border crossings down. The global warming slowed down, still going up, but the economy grew, unemployment was down, the stock market was up, most of the troops back from the Middle East, things like that. Al-Qaeda and the Taliban pushed back. I know it researched since. Do you like Obama? Yeah, I do, actually. No disasters on his watch. Took some action in Syria, avoided full commitment in Syria. He keeps quiet a few days, but obviously not successful in everything. Normalized relations with Cuba, that was a step forward. The situation in North Korea didn't get worse. So what was I going to say? Anyway, so only allowing toadies to be near him, these place hunters, these groupies who know what to say, just suck up to him and then reinforce his delusions. Why is Obama quiet now? I suppose because that would be grist to the mill for the other side. Then there's some people who just really get off on hating Obama. Always calling it Obamacare, making it about him, not the substance of what it actually did for ordinary people. Putting around these blatant lies like that he's a Muslim. Not that it would be bad if he was a Muslim, or that he's a socialist when there's no reason to believe that he's a socialist. He's very capitalist. Or these birthers, these racist bigots, disseminating this nonsense about him not being a born American. Obama did absolutely nothing to solve economic problems. The Federal Reserve just papered up the crisis with the end of the quantitative easing. Okay, so why did the stock market keep rising and why did unemployment go down a lot? Sounds pretty good to me. I think Blair is bringing peace. I didn't admit that. He met Ian Paisley, Trump. Oh, right. I see. Anyway, so sycophancy is obviously bad for anyone because it can give people an inflated sense of their own abilities. So he accepts this inordinate exaltation as no more than is due from Stephen Miller and so many more of his Camarilla. So these consiglieri, if they know what's good for their career, they have to praise him in ever more ludicrous terms, just striving to outbid each other with sucking up to him. Tony Blair, thoughts if you can. Okay, not right now, please. You're kind of interrupting, but there's so many suggestions for videos. Donate to me. Donate to me on Patreon or on PayPal. Find me on PayPal, georgecallahan79@gmail.com. Anyway, so other examples of his hubris, of his narcissistic personality disorder, is he demands craven obeisance from others, and indeed he receives it. He's impatient, he's volatile, he's so imprudent. He has the attention span of a mayfly, and he shows his complete indifference to particulars. You'd need to know the details of policy, not the minutiae. You just don't have time. Not everything can be on a radar screen. You can get bogged down in that. Flattery seems to work on him when it comes to Israel. Exactly. Your son is a top economist. Okay, good to hear it, Peter. Because Bibi Netanyahu, he obviously knows how to butter Trump up. You can play him like a fiddle. It's not difficult to manipulate him. Just suck up to him. oh, Donald, you're the greatest, and you'll get what you want out of him. Putin can do that very easily. So Trump is always about him. How was I treated? Not with like the policy considerations. Detach myself, calm down, lay aside emotion. What am I trying to achieve here? What gives me the best chance of achieving my goals? What are the pros and cons of this decision? What could go wrong and things like that. But with China, it's all, well, they rolled out the red carpet for me. You know, they really sucked up to me. They gave me this ovation, so I think they're fantastic. Putin flatters, I don't think so. Well, I would say he does, because when Trump was only a candidate, Putin was publicly saying how fantastic Trump was. So, like Hitler never asking you to see the files on matters. Okay, that's what he said. And incidentally, when I liken him to Hitler, I'm not saying that Trump is planning on genocide. No, I don't think so. But there are certain personality traits that he's got in common. And then Trump has got personality traits in common with fairly ordinary politicians, or I like or dislike them, like Blair or Thatcher. Does going off topic annoy you? It does a little bit, because you know I'm trying to get through it, and then other people are watching this thing. What? Why is he just like jumping to this other subject? So insouciance is good up to a point in a leader, but you need to be concerned, if not worried. Obviously, panic never helps, but it's like just irresponsible not to care enough to think about things of possible ramifications of your policies, like how it might fail, how there might be some unforeseen consequences, and things like that. So Trump has this belief that his mission is correct, but what really is his mission? MAGA shows of lack of understanding where all the free money went. Oh, about Obama, about quantitative easing, just printing more money. Yeah. Okay. Well, the deficit did go up under him, but it's gone up even. It always goes up. Maybe went up too much, but it's gone up so much more under Trump, and people weren't digging themselves out of a crisis. They could not have cut the taxes for the super rich again, and there's very little evidence that it does lead to economic growth. And even when it does speed up the economy, that disproportionately benefits the already super rich. Doesn't do much for the average Joe. So anyway, his belief in MAGA, not really a moral agenda. He has this frightening belief in his own moral uprightness, despite it being just so immoral. And therefore, as these are moral imperatives like to beef up America militarily and smash your enemies, there are no restraints on what he's going to do. Problems of global financial environments have gone away. Quantitative easing in our near future again. Expect more QE. Well, it might do. Therefore, Trump is no better than Obama, according to your own rationale. So Trump's obviously completely Machiavellian. The ends justifies the means. There's no restraint on what he's going to do. No law or no ethics are going to hold him back. He's merciless. I want to do this. I don't give a damn if it's illegal. I don't give a damn if it's immoral, how much it harms people. Gold standard back, I doubt it. No one's suggesting that. Has politics ever been more toxic than any time before? Well, it depends where. In the US, I suppose we're on the Civil War. That might be about it. So Trump will apply standards to others, saying, oh, they're lying, or they're very unfair. But he won't be bound by law or ethics himself. Do you have Patreon? Yes, I do. Please support me on Patreon. I need donations to sustain this channel. I'm also on PayPal, georgecallahan79@gmail.com. UK politics is toxic at the moment. I think it's not as bad. I mean, apart from the Conservative Party, the other parties are cooperating quite a lot, actually. But in a sense, isn't it good that we have real politics, we have real disagreement, that we have several parties and there's room for many different opinions? You know, let 1,000 schools of thought contend. Antagonism is good in politics. Well, up to a point. I don't want it to be like ludicrously oppositional and like a Punch and Judy show, but the politicians shouldn't be like a conspiracy organized against the public. So we need an adversarial system. We need a critical analysis of the government. We don't want dummy opposition like in Russia, the systemic opposition you just pretend to oppose and are actually, you know, marionettes of the executive. Anyway, so he has this belief in the moral supremacy of his own cause. He's not a very moralistic person, but I am right, and this is great for America, and the military is great, and we have to smash our enemies, and we have to lower taxes. And he won't consider any downsides. There's a big drop in what happened with the removal of the gold standard. I don't know much about economics. So populism, yeah, he's a demagogue. And he feels precluded from any need to consider the feasibility of a policy that's cost in blood and treasure, the time scale, or anything prosaic like that. Is this wall going to be built? You know, can ISIS really be smashed? What happens if you go to visit North Korea? What happens if you go to war against Iran? Doesn't seem to have figured this out. These things are just not thought through. Yeah. What are the probable repercussions of these? Or what are the positive consequences you're going to achieve? You're going to achieve, okay, so North Korea disarms in a nuclear manner. Okay. Does that mean you have to have troops out of South Korea? Or what? Are you going to nuclear disarm? I don't think so. Is China going to invade North Korea then? So it doesn't seem to have thought about any of this. So there's a refusal to pace up to the possibility that even parts of his plan will go awry, or unforeseen circumstances may arise, or there'll be some unanticipated consequences. So this is his incompetence. He just doesn't do his homework, not preparing for his visit to the United Kingdom, getting the protocol wrong on the first one, not the state visit, walking in front of the Queen, just complete inattention to detail. No continuity, no joined up thinking, refusal to do anything tedious, so he can't be fagged with anything petty or time consuming or painstaking. Now Blair, for his faults, he worked really hard, he pushed himself to the bone, so even though he had some hubristic tendencies, he burnt the midnight oil. No contingency plan exactly. So I mentioned, I've likened Trump to various other leaders, good and bad, and he had some traits in common with some of them, other traits in common with others of them. But you can have some of these negative characteristics that he has and still be overall a good person or hardworking or whatever. Blair, I know he was deluded, he had some sort of morality, he had some sort of goals. You might say they were foolish, it was too starry-eyed, and it backfired sometimes. Blair ended the troubles with Ahern, but the reputation of both of them tanked. Well, really, the security forces did, and the informers. I know that people don't like the informers usually, and they sometimes did it for money. They still did it. Trump celebrated the killing of bin Laden's son. Isn't that a bit unnerving? Even if you're an enemy, you shouldn't be happy about a person's death. No, I don't agree. Some people are evil. Yes, Peter, I am an Oxford man. See my videos on Oxford University. So Trump's obviously very uninquisitive. It sometimes goes with this sort of personality. He doesn't have an inquiring mind. Which of his loathsome offspring are most repelling? The two boys, well, Ivanka, the oldest boys, the younger daughter is a bit dim, but one of them, who's that guy? Donald Jr., he's got most of America's oil reserves in his hair. Blair wasn't soft on crime, unlike May. Well, May, I don't think she's particularly soft, but they axed 20,000 police under her and Cameron. So Trump doesn't know any of the languages. Blair and Ahern get no credit for the peace process. They do get a bit, but obviously others had laid the groundwork for it, like Albert Reynolds and John Major, and just the IRA and the INLA were defeated, and the loyalist terrorists they've been taken down by the security forces, including the Garda Síochána. So Trump, even though his grandparents came from Germany, doesn't speak any German at all. So the man's an ignoramus. Wouldn't you want to learn a tiny bit of your ancestral language? Even though he's so well-travelled, owning places all over the world, doesn't learn a word of their languages, married to 2 foreign women. The loyalists defeated how? As in sending them sent to prison, just not able to kill people, thoroughly penetrated by informers. The Republicans also riddled with informers too. So Trump has got this tendency towards melodrama and nonchalance in the face of grave difficulties. It's inspiring to some, but it's not a positive sort of nonchalance. It's just, again, it's just not being sufficiently concerned, to having a cavalier attitude, thinking, oh, it'll all work itself out. And Hitler used to be the same thing, the same game. Oh, they all sort themselves out towards the end, only beginning to feel blind panic when it was too late. So yeah, the Royal Ulster Constabulary, Ulster Defence Regiment, they took down the terrorists of both sides. So the RUC's name is forever illumined in glory. The UDR did not back the UDF. The UDR was obviously against the UVF and all terrorists. It's true that sometimes the UVF managed to infiltrate the UDR. What about the public ISIS killings of Swedish tourists and the news? I didn't hear about that. Anyway, so some of these traits will have been apparent in Trump by the age of 18, as his classmates testified. So he suffers from a total dearth of objectivity or probity, and you've got to dispassionately examine things if you're going to make sensible decisions. Anyway, so he's full of self-pity. Oh, woe is me a lot of the time, this persecution complex, and obviously not facing up to his responsibility for things when things have gone wrong. Oh, they're all very unfair to me, whining like that. Doesn't turn it into a positive thing like Mussolini did, saying, oh, tanti nemici molto onore, as in many foes, much honor. So Trump is so often relying on adrenaline in his speeches. Um, so he thinks he can intuit the right decision to take with his charismatic style of leadership. Not really an ideology. A few policies. What would they be? Build that wall, yeah. Destroy ISIS, cut taxes, pollute the environment. Yeah, no publicly funded healthcare. I can't think what else he's going to do to improve life in America. No gun control. Is that about right? Cut taxes for the super rich. Okay, that's about the size of it. Cult of the personality was often going I, me, mine, or referring to himself by his name. You know, the royal we. Absolute madness. So, what's the antidote to all this? What you want in a leader is someone who'd say, like, Red Canby. One of my friends was an advisor to NATO armies in Afghanistan, and say, US commander would say, Red Canby, which means, I want you to criticize me, destructive criticism of all things that's going to go wrong, expose all the weaknesses of my plan. I have to consider these flaws. How serious are they? Should I change? And all that kind of thing. So it reminds me of the triumphs in ancient Rome when the victorious Roman commander would go through Rome in a chariot, like a ticker tape parade, and people chanting his name and all that splendor there when he's being adulated. And a slave had to stand behind him, whispering in his ear, Remember, you're only a man. Remember, you're only a man. Just so he didn't think he was a divinity. Because, yeah, remember the Romans believed that a man could become a god. They believed the first king, was it Romulus, that he turned into a god when he disappeared in front of everyone, became the god Quirinius, as in the Quirinial Hill, or the Palazzo Quirinale, where the president of Italy lives now. But so Trump, well, he then calling himself the chosen one, show how he had these sort of divine delusions. So Trump is so often locked in a dispute with the press corps, and obviously the press shouldn't be unduly hostile. Should give him his due, give him fair coverage, and they do. But when he tells a flagrant lie, should say that. Don't pretend the truth is halfway in between him and the Democrats. He's so often telling lies, and obviously you have to scrutinize the Republican Party when they're speaking up for him like that. Anyway, so I'm going to sign off now about Trump. I'm really sick of him, but unfortunately can't be ignored.